Hi, welcome back to the show. I'm Alex.
And I'm Dom.
And this is the Alex and Dom Show. Today we're going to do an episode on the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571.
Oh, a mystery.
Going to Uruguay this time. The Uruguayan Air Force Flight 551 was a chartered flight of Fairchild FH-227D from Montevideo, Uruguay to Santiago, Chile. So, let's get into the flight. Members of the amateur Old Christian Club rugby union team from Montevideo, Uruguay, were scheduled to play a match against the Old Boys Club, an English rugby team in Santiago, Chile.
The Old Boys Club sounds like an English team. I'm not even going to lie.
It really does.
That sounds like it 100%.
Old
if you didn't
Boys
say
Club.
English, I'd be like...
Yeah, it's English, like the Old Boys. Get a little Old Boys to play some rugby.
Boys Club.
Club president Danielle Juan chartered a Uruguayan Air Force twin turboprop Fairchild FH-227D to fly the team over the Andes to Santiago. Mm-hmm. The aircraft carried 40 passengers and 5 crew members. Colonel Julio Cesar Ferrados was an experienced Air Force pilot who had a total of 5,117 flying hours.
That's pretty impressive.
He was accompanied by co-pilot Lieutenant Colonel Dante Hector Lagararo. Sorry, these names are really hard to pronounce.
Probably Laguera.
Yeah, Laguera. Yeah. There were 10 extra seats, and the team members invited a few friends and family members to accompany them.
So just the teams, then a couple of family members.
So it was 40.
And the
It was 40. It was 40 people and 5 crew members.
Right.
So it was probably around 30. It's 30 team members and then 10 extra people.
30 people, like the pilots and the flight attendants aren't people. Sorry.
Yeah. And then the 5 people. When someone canceled at the last minute, Guizelo Mariano bought the seat so she could attend her oldest daughter's wedding.
So she hadn't even had
So she had
anything to do
no
with
affiliation with them. No affiliation with the team
she
at
just bought
all.
tickets for the flight to be able to get to her daughter's thing.
Oldest daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
The aircraft departed from Carrasco International Airport on the 12th of October, 1972. But a storm front over the Andes forced them to stop overnight at Mendoza, Argentina.
Okay.
Although there is a direct route from Mendoza to Santiago, 120 miles to the west, the high mountains require an altitude of 25,000 to 26,000 feet. Mm-hmm. Very close to the FH-227D's maximum operational ceiling of 28,000 feet.
Right.
Given that the aircraft was fully loaded and the route would have required the pilot to very carefully calculate fuel consumption to avoid the mountains. Instead, it was customary for this type of aircraft to fly a longer 370-mile, 90-minute U-shaped route from Mendoza south to Maragüey using the A7 airway, known today as the UW-44.
So that's not what they did. It would have been what they were supposed to do, but they didn't do that.
I don't know. We'll find out.
All right.
From there, aircraft flew west via the G-17 or the UB-684 airway, crossing Placen and the Carucia radio beacon in Chile, and from the north to Santiago.
So they went over Chile?
I mean, yeah, like Chile, Uruguay,
where
and
they going,
Argentina.
Weren't they going to Chile? Why would they pass over it and then not stop?
What?
Isn't that their destination is Chile?
Santiago, Chile. Chile's a big place.
Yeah, I guess probably.
You can't just land anywhere in Chile. You're like, oh, well, we got you to Chile.
Well, let's walk the rest of the way.
Yeah. The weather on the 13th of October also affected the flight. On that morning, conditions over the Andes had not improved, but changes were expected by the early afternoon. The pilot waited and took off at 2:18 p.m. on Friday 13th in October.
Of course,
from Mendoza.
Of course,
yes.
it's Friday the 13th.
He flew south from Mendoza towards Paraguay radio beacon at the flight level of 18,000 feet. Uruguay radioed that the Paraguay airport with their position and told them that they would reach 8,251 feet high Platchen Pass at 3:21 p.m. Platchen Pass is an air traffic control handoff point from one side of the Andes to the other, with controllers in Mendoza transferring flight tracking duties over to the Parajú Air Traffic Control in Santiago, Chile. Once across the mountains in Chile, south of Crucio, the aircraft was supposed to turn north and initiate a descent into Parajú Airport in Santiago.
But it didn't do that.
Well, we'll get into exactly what happened during this flight. Pilot Ferredios had flown across the Andes 29 times previously.
A lot of experience.
Yes. On this flight, he was training co-pilot Lagorio, who was at the controls. And that's important. He was at the controls. So the less experienced pilot was controlling the plane.
Right. Yeah, but couldn't they just switch it over real quick? He's still there. The
I don't know.
More experienced pilot's still there.
I don't know. Like, I think, like, once you make a mistake on an airplane, I don't think it's like, especially if you're close to the ground or close to hitting something. It's not like in the movies where you just pull up real quick and you're like, you missed it.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
I know.
No, I think it's like you pull up and the plane's like, yeah, I think I'll go this way instead.
Yeah.
So, as they flew through the Andes, clouds obscured the mountains. The aircraft FAU 571 was 4 years old and had 792 airframe hours. The aircraft was regarded by some pilots as underpowered and had been nicknamed by them as the lead sled. So, given that the cloud cover, the pilots were flying under instrument meteorological conditions and the altitude of 18,000 feet, which means they're unable to see. They couldn't see out because of the fog and the storm. So they were using the instruments. No, they were flying per instruments.
Gotcha.
At 18,000 feet and could not visually confirm their location. While some reports state that the pilot incorrectly estimated his position using dead reckoning, the pilot was relying
So he guessed.
I
reckon it might be right.
The pilot was relying on radio navigation.
Oh, boy.
The aircraft's VOR DME instrument displayed to the pilot a digital reading of the distance of the next radio beacon in Crucio. At Platchen Pass, the aircraft still had to travel 37 to 43 miles to even reach Crucio. Regardless, at 3:21, shortly after transiting the pass, the more experienced pilot contacted Santiago and notified air traffic controllers that he expected to reach Crucio a minute later.
Okay.
The flight time from the pass to Crucio is normally 11 minutes, but only 3 minutes later, the pilot told Santiago that they were passing Crucio and turning north.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's weird.
They would have been having to fly very fast.
To go from 11 minutes to 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He requested permission from air traffic control to descend. The controller in Santiago, unaware the flight was still over the Andes, authorized him to descend 11,500 feet.
Did he think it had been 11 minutes? Did he? I don't understand.
He might. I don't know. I mean, he's probably assuming that the pilots know what the fuck they're doing.
No, I'm talking about the pilots themselves. Why did the pilots, after only 3 minutes, assume that they were over where they were supposed to be?
It could have been anything. It could have been an instrument, human error. I mean, anything. Like, this is. Don't forget, this is the 1970s.
Yeah. So the air traffic controllers told him, yeah, it's safe to land, even though you're directly over the top of the Andes.
Yeah. So this is the 70s. So, like, we have a lot better equipment. And, you know, pretty much this is why we have better equipment.
Yeah.
So they gave him permission to come down to 11,500 feet. Later analysis of their flight path found that the pilot had not only turned too early, but turned on a heading of 014 degrees when he should have turned 030 degrees.
I don't know what any of that means, but I'm just going to assume it was a mistake.
Yeah. He turned, like, instead of turning the full amount, he turned about half where he was supposed to turn. As the aircraft descended through severe turbulence, tossed the aircraft up and down, Nando Parado recalled hitting a downdraft, causing the plane to drop several hundred feet out of the clouds.
Wow.
The rugby players
turning in the cabins.
The rugby players joked about the turbulence at first until some passengers saw that the aircraft was very close to the mountains.
Yeah. God, that'd be terrifying.
Oh my God, we're gonna crash!
Oh, this is hilarious.
Yeah, woo!
Oh man,
we're big burly men. Yeah. Oh shit, that's a fucking mountain. That was probably the moment when the pilot saw the black ridge rising dead ahead.
That would be terrifying.
Roberto Calanesi later said that he thought the pilot turned north too soon and began the descent to Santiago, where the aircraft was still high in the Andes.
Yeah.
Then he began to climb until the pilot was nearly vertical and began to stall and shake. Ugh. The aircraft ground collision alarms sounded, alarming all of the passengers.
Yeah.
So basically what he did was they dropped several hundred feet, which several hundred feet is a good distance.
Yeah.
Saw that there was a big black ridge coming at him full speed,
and then shot
and
the
just
joysticks
literally just pulled as hard as he could, and it was like
stalled the plane out.
Yeah. So I mean,
I think maybe that the more experienced pilot probably should have been the ones with the sticks, but you know.
Well, I mean, he's flown over 29 times. Yeah. Like he was like, "Oh, this is an easy flight. Like I do this all the time," not realizing that.
It seems like he made like one mistake. And then just like went into panic mode, and then just started screwing up left and right.
Yeah, when you panic, you make the most mistakes. The pilot applied maximum power in an attempt to gain altitude.
Oh my God!
Witness accounts and evidence at the scene indicated the plane struck the mountain either 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah. The pilot was able to bring the aircraft nose over the ridge, but at 3:34 p.m., the lower part of the tail cone may have clipped the ridge at 13,800 feet.
Wow.
The next collision severed the right wing. Some evidence indicates that it thrown back with such force that it tore off the vertical stabilizer and the tail cone.
God.
When the tail cone was detached, it took with the rear portion of the fuselage, including 2 rows of seats in the rear section of the passenger cabin, the galley, baggage hold, vertical stabilizer, and horizontal stabilizers, leaving a gaping hole in the rear of the fuselage. 3 passengers, the navigator, and the steward were lost with the tail section.
Oh.
So that's 5 people gone during this crash.
Mm-hmm.
The aircraft continued forward and upward another 660 feet for a few more seconds. Then the left wing was struck, outcropping at 14,400 feet, tearing off the wing. One of the propellers sliced through the fuselage as the wing itself was severed. 2 more passengers fell off the rear of the fuselage. So that's 7. The front portion of the fuselage flew straight through the air before sliding down a steep glacier at 220 miles per hour, like a high-speed toboggan, and descended about 2,379 feet when the fuselage collided with a snowbank. The seats were torn from their base and thrown against the forward bulkhead and each other. The impact crushed the co-pilot with the 2 pilots inside. Cockpit with the 2 pilots inside, killing Ferrados immediately.
Oh.
So the more experienced pilot, who probably could have gotten them out of it, helped them survive, killed instantaneously.
Yep.
The official investigation concluded that the crash was caused by a controlled flight into terrain due to pilot error.
Yeah.
So completely pilot's fault. Yeah. The plane fuselage came to rest on the glacier at 34 degrees to 45 to 54 degrees south, 70 degrees, 1711 west, at the elevation of 11,710 feet in the Uruguay department, Mendoza province. The unnamed glacier, later named Glacier de las Galerias, or the Glacier of Tears, is between Mount Susanudu and at 14,040 feet high, Volcan Tingariguria. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing these wrong, but I did not take Spanish. Straddling the remote mountainous border between Chile and Argentina, and it is south of the 15,260 foot high Mount Selir, the mountain they later climbed, and which Nando Parado named after his father. The aircraft was 50 miles east of its planned route.
Wow.
So even if they're searching to rescue them and just going by the flight plan, they're 50 miles east of where they were supposed to be.
Yeah. Don't they account for that, though?
No. When they do a flight plan and if they can't find, like...
Yeah, but what if an emergency causes it to stray off the flight path?
They
have to expect that to
remember they
happen.
radioed.
Yeah.
I'm passing this.
Yeah.
That was 50 miles
Off.
west of where they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
So if you get a last contact, like, hey, we're over this, and even if they're like, Mayday, 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 we are
I
here,
forgot about that part.
and stuff, they're 50 miles east of where that Mayday probably went out.
Right.
So, and this is, like I said, 1970s. They don't have, like, exactly where the plane is.
Right.
I mean, even, like, the Malaysian airline that
Yeah.
disappeared. We have no idea where the hell that went.
Right.
We still don't know. So, I mean, it happens even today, you know? So, after the crash, of the 45 people on the aircraft, 3 passengers and 2 crew members in the tail section were killed when it broke apart.
Yep.
Lieutenant Ramon Sal Martinez, or Vito Ramirez, the plane steward, Gaston Castamala, Aloha Ahina, and Guido Magri. A few seconds later, Daniel Shaw and Carlos Valita fell out of the rear fuselage. Valita survived his fall, but stumbled down the snow-covered glacier, fell into a deep snow, and was asphyxiated.
Oh, man.
Yeah, his body was found by fellow passengers on the 14th of December.
That's so messed up.
At least 4 died in the impact of the fuselage hitting the snowbank, which ripped the remaining seats from the anchors and hurled them to the front of the plane.
Yep.
Team physician Dr. Francisco Nicolo and his wife Esther Nicolo, Eugenia Parada, and Fernando Vasquez, medical student, so the team doctor
Yep.
and the medical student died.
That figures.
I know, that's the ones that you want to be living
To survive.
to
yeah.
survive. Pilot Ferrados died instantly when the nose gear compressed in the instrument panel against his chest, forcing his head out of the window. Co-pilot Lagrario was critically injured and trapped in the crushed cockpit. I'm sorry, Lagrario was the more experienced pilot. Ferretto was the dude flying the plane. He was the co-pilot.
Right.
He was killed instantly.
Gotcha.
So he asked one of his passengers to find his pistol and shoot him, but the passenger declined.
Right.
Yeah, like, he's dying, he's crushed, he's trapped, he's critically injured. Kill me.
Yeah.
Put me out of my misery. I'm going to die anyways.
He didn't want to do it.
33 remained alive, although many were seriously or critically injured,
For real.
with wounds including broken legs, which had resulted from the aircraft seats collapsing forward against the luggage partition and the pilot's cabin.
Yep.
So, I mean, like, it's a miracle that they survived anyways. I think if they didn't slide down that, if they didn't hit the mountain and slide
They
and
probably
just
wouldn't have.
slammed into it, they would all died.
Yeah.
Canessa and Gustavo Sarbine, both medical students, acted quickly to assess the severity of people's wounds. So they still had some medical students.
Some, yeah.
Yeah. And to treat those that could help them the most. Nando Pareto had a skull fracture and remained in a coma for 3 days.
That sucks.
Yeah. Enrico Patella had a piece of metal stuck through in his abdomen that had been removed, and brought a few inches of intestines with it.
Ew.
But he immediately began helping others. Both Arturo and Negro's legs were broken in several places. None of these passengers with compound fractures survived. So you know what compound fracture is, right?
Yeah.
It's where the bone sticks out.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. So this plane crash is like
Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so let's get into the search and rescue. The Chilean Air Search and Rescue Service, or SARS, was notified within the hour of this flight going missing. 4 planes searched that afternoon until dark. The news of the missing flight reached Uruguayan media about 6 p.m. that evening. Officers of the Chilean SARS listened to the radio transmissions and concluded that the aircraft had come down in one of the most remote and inaccessible areas of the Andes.
Of course.
They called on the Andes Rescue Group of Chile, or the CSA. Unknown to the people on board or the rescuers, the flight had crashed about 13 miles from the former Hotel Termas El Susonado, an abandoned resort and hot springs that might have provided limited shelter.
They could have at least gotten some hot springs in.
Yeah, they literally could have, 13 miles away, they could have, 13 miles in the snow and high terrain.
They wouldn't have known it was there, of course, but God, that sucks.
God, they could have went there. They would have survived.
Yeah.
On the second day, 11 aircraft from Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay searched for the downed flight. The search area included their location, and a few aircraft flew near the crash site. The survivors tried to use lipstick recovered from the luggage to write an SOS on the roof of the aircraft.
Yeah.
But they quit after realizing that they lacked enough lipstick to make letters visible from the air.
Yeah.
They also built a cross in the snow using luggage, but it was unseen by the search and rescue aircraft. They
built a fire.
Yeah, they saw. Well, it's hard.
Yeah, I know.
They saw 3 aircraft fly overhead, but were unable to attract their attention, and none of the aircraft crews spotted the white fuselage against the snow.
Yep.
Like I said, it's a white fuselage against snow. It's gonna blend right in.
Yeah, I know. That sucks.
The harsh conditions gave searchers little hope that they would find anyone alive.
Right.
Search efforts were canceled after 8 days.
Wow.
On the 21st of October, after searching a total of 142 hours and 30 minutes, the searchers concluded that there was no hope and terminated the search. The
What if
snow
there were survivors, dude? That would suck so bad being
Yeah.
a survivor, right? And then you just be like
having
just
them give up on them.
a couple more days, just we gotta make
Yeah.
it a couple more days, and then they're without even knowing, realize that they're never gonna come looking for you.
Yeah. The snow had not melted at this time in the southern hemisphere of spring. They had hoped to find the bodies in December when the snow melted in the summer. The first week. During the first night, 5 more people died.
Yeah.
Co-pilot Legrero, Francisco Abal, Gonzalez Morena, Felipe Maguanian, and Julio Martinez Lamas. The passengers removed the broken seats and other debris from the aircraft and fashioned a crude shelter. The 28 people crammed themselves into the broken fuselage in a space about 2.5 by 3 meters, or 8 foot 2 inches to 9 feet and 10 inches. So not even an 8 by 10 place.
Yeah.
To try to keep out of some of the cold. They used luggage, seats, and snow to close off the open end of the fuselage.
Yeah.
They improvised in other ways. Fido Strach devised a way to obtain water in the freezing conditions by using sheet metal from under the seats and placing the snow on it. The solar collector melted snow, which dripped into empty wine bottles.
That's pretty smart.
To prevent snow blindness, he improvised sunglasses using the sun visors in the pilot's cabin.
Dude's pretty smart.
Wire and a bar strap. This dude, they literally crashed with MacGyver.
I know, for real.
They removed the seat covers, which were partially made of wool, to use against the cold.
Yeah.
They used the seat cushions as snowshoes, and Marcelo Perez, captain of the rugby team, assumed leadership.
The biggest, strongest one of them all.
Yeah.
I will be your leader.
Nando Parado woke up from his coma after 3 days to learn that his mother had died.
Oh, man.
And that his 19-year-old sister...
And then he's still out there, too.
Yeah.
That would suck so bad.
Yeah, 19-year-old sister Susanna Barreto was severely injured.
God, dude, it's bad. It would be bad enough waking up in a coma in a hospital where you're finally safe,
Yeah.
after missing that much time or missing a bunch of time or whatever. But to wake up from a coma, even if it's a short coma, and still be in the same situation is just does not sound like a fun situation.
Yeah,
at
and
all.
knowing that your mom died and
Yeah.
your sister severely injured, yeah, it sucks. He attempted to keep her alive without success.
Oh.
As during the 8th day, she succumbed to her injuries. The remaining 27 faced severe difficulty surviving the nights when temperatures dropped to negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit. If you don't live in America, that's negative 30 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
All had lived near the sea. Some of the team members had never seen snow before, and none of them had experience at high altitude. It's harder to breathe. It's harder to do anything in high altitude.
Yeah.
You're from Denver, that's a mile high. This is several miles high.
Yeah.
The survivors lacked medical supplies, cold weather clothing, and equipment or food, and they only had 3 pairs of sunglasses among them to help prevent snow blindness. So snow blindness is where the sun beats off the sun. It reflects because it's pure white, and there's a little layer of water usually on top. That comes out, that blinds you.
Yeah.
You like it. It's like looking directly into the sun.
Right.
It's horrible. The survivors found a small transistor radio jammed between the seats of the aircraft, and Roy Harley improvised a very long antenna using electrical cable from the plane. He heard on the news that the search was canceled on the 11th day of the mountain. That fucking sucks.
That was
so bad.
So awful. Oh no.
That, can you imagine just finding a radio, just like, yeah, we're going to call for help. Hell yeah, we're going to do something. We're going to find out, how close are they? When are we getting rescued? And then just to realize that
They're not.
they canceled it. You're just like, shit. Oh, God. Piers Paul Reed's book, Alive, The Story of the Andes Survivors, described the moments after this discovery. The others who had clustered around Roy upon hearing the news began to sob and pray, all except Nando Parado, who looked calmly up at the mountains which rose to the west. Gustavo Coco Nicolich came out of the aircraft and, seeing their faces, knew they had heard. Nicolich climbed through the hole in the wall of the suitcases and rugby shirts, crouched at the mouth of the dim tunnel, and looked at the mournful faces which were turned towards him. "Hey, boys," he shouted. "There's some good news. We just heard on the radio. They've called off the search." Inside the crowded aircraft, there was silence as hopelessness of their predicament enveloped them. They wept. "Why the hell is that good news?" Paus shouted angrily at Nicolich. "Because it means," Nicolich said, "that we're going to get out of here on our own." The courage of this one boy prevented a flood of total despair.
I would have punched him in the face. I'm sorry. There's good news. The search party's called off, but on the bright side, we get to get out of here on our own now. I'd be like...
I know, yeah, but you'd punch him. But if you got out of there on your own, oh my God, dude, do you imagine the story? When all hope was lost.
My God, that would piss me off if I was one of those people.
We decided to take matters into our own hands, and we got out of there.
I'd be suing some people. When I got back home, I tell you
I
that
would
right
be
now.
thinking of how much money I'm going to make off movie rights.
Yeah.
Now, the survivors had very little food. 8 chocolate bars, a tin of mussels, 3 small jars of jam, a tin of almonds, and a few dates.
Wow.
Candies, dried plums, and several bottles of wine. And again, they derived a plan to get water.
Yeah.
So, you can last 3 to 4 weeks without food.
Yeah.
And it was 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So 3 weeks. They could have lasted 3 weeks without food, as long as they had water.
Right.
During the days following the crash, they divided this into small amounts to make their meager supply last as long as possible. Parado ate a single chocolate-covered peanut over 3 days.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Because, yeah, for real. Because, I don't know if you've ever went a day without eating,
I've
but
gone
when you
a couple
eat,
days
you're
before.
ravenous.
Yep. And it's not just that; it's that he's eating one thing. So
Yeah.
he's
Not even
starving.
that, he's biting.
I
it.
know, that's what I'm saying. But can you imagine after starving, right, and getting just that taste, it would make the hunger 1,000 times worse because you get that your
And you get hunger pains.
Yeah.
You get sick to your stomach and hunger
awful,
pains.
dude. I can't imagine.
Even with this strict rationing, their food stock dwindled quickly.
Yep.
There was no natural vegetation, and there were no animals on either the glacier or the nearby snow-covered mountain.
Of course not.
The food ran out after a week, and the group tried to eat parts of the airplane, such as the cotton inside the seats and the leather.
They even tried to eat stuff you can't even eat before they resorted to cannibalism.
They became sicker from eating these.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Knowing that rescue efforts had been called off and faced with starvation and death, those still alive agreed that should they die, the others might consume their bodies to live.
Yeah. And
With
we've talked about that before.
Yeah. We did a whole episode on
Donner Party.
the Donner Party. So this is nothing new to the Alex and Dom show.
Yeah.
This might be new to you, but people, when they get desperate, they eat people. With no choice, the survivors ate the bodies of their dead friends. Survivor Roberto Canesso described the decision to eat the pilots and their dead friends and family members. Here's what he said. Our common goal was to survive, but what we had lacked was food, and we had long since run out of the meager supply pickings that we found on the plane. And there was no vegetation or animal life to be found. After just a few days, we were feeling the sensation of our own bodies consuming themselves just to remain alive. Before long, we would become too weak to recover from starvation. We knew the answer, but it was too terrible to contemplate.
You know what's even worse? They had to eat it raw. Because there's no, like I said, there's no vegetation. There's nothing that they could have used to make a fire.
Yeah. The bodies of our friends and teammates preserved outside in the snow and ice contained vital, life-giving protein. They could help us survive. But could we do it? For a long time, we agonized. I went out in the snow and prayed to God for guidance. Without his consent, I felt I would be violating the memory of my friends, that I would be stealing their souls.
I can only imagine the guilt that you feel.
Oh my God, the therapy.
Yeah.
We wondered whether we were going mad even to contemplate such a thing. Had we turned into brute savages? Or was this the only sane thing to do? Truly, we were pushing the limits of our own fear. Mm-hmm. The group survived by collectively deciding to eat the flesh from the bodies of their dead comrades. This decision was not taken lightly, as most of the dead were classmates, close friends, and even relatives. Mm-hmm. Canissa used broken glass from the aircraft windshield as a cutting tool. He set an example by swallowing the first matchstick-sized strip of frozen flesh. Later on, several others did the same. The next day, more survivors ate the meat offered to them, but a few refused or could not keep it down.
Yeah.
In his memoir, Miracle in the Andes, 72 Days on the Mountain and My Long Trek Home, Nando Paredo wrote about this decision. At high altitude, the body's caloric needs are astronomical.
Yeah, way more than they would be.
We were starving in earnest, with no hope of finding food, but our hunger soon grew to voracious. Then that we searched anyway. Again and again, we scoured the fuselage in search for crumbs or morsels. We tried to eat strips of leather torn from the pieces of luggage, though we knew that the chemicals had been treated with what would do us more harm than good. We ripped open the seat cushions, hoping to find straw, but found out inedible upholstery foam. Again and again, I came to the same conclusion. Unless we wanted to eat the clothes we were wearing, there was nothing here but aluminum, plastic, ice, and rock.
That's awful.
Yeah. Paredo protected the corpses of his sister and mother. They were never eaten.
Oh, that's nice of them.
They dried the meat in the sun, which made it more palatable. Yeah. They were initially so revolted by the experience that they could only eat skin, muscle, and fat. When the supply of flesh was diminished, they also ate hearts, lungs, and even brains. What they should have eaten was the liver.
More
fat
good stuff in it.
Yeah, no, fat. You need fat to survive.
Yeah.
You need a lot of fat. All of the passengers were Roman Catholic. Some feared internal damnation.
That would be a serious problem for
Yeah.
anybody who's religious, really.
According to Reed, some rationalized the attack of cannibalism as equivalent to the Eucharist, the body and the blood of Jesus Christ, under the appearance of bread and wine. Others justified it according to a Bible verse found in John 15:13. No man hath greater love than this, that lay down his life for his friends. Mm-hmm. So they literally like, oh, if I die, I sacrifice my body.
It was probably a little bit easier if they had to eat somebody that gave their consent beforehand than it was for the ones that
that didn't.
Yeah, but still would be awful.
In the end, all of those who had survived of the decision to eat the bodies did so, though not all without reservations. Yeah. Javier Mathol and his wife, Liliana, the only surviving female passenger, were the last survivors to eat human flesh. She had strong religious convictions, and they only reluctantly agreed to partake in the flesh after she was told to view it as like Holy Communion.
Yeah.
They're like,
so
hey, you got to survive. Think of it as the body and blood of Christ.
Yeah.
And she was like,
all right, fine.
All right, she finally relented. Yeah. 17 days after the crash, near midnight on the 29th of October, an avalanche struck the aircraft
kidding me.
containing the survivors as they slept. Oh God.
These people have the worst luck.
Yeah, they really did. And so, so as of right now, who do you think has the worst luck? The Donner Party or these guys? Yeah. Oh my God.
Because the Donner Party, a lot of it was like human error and mistakes made that could have been prevented.
Yeah.
This a little bit too, but at the same time,
yeah, but it was a mistake of one person.
Yeah, these poor passengers had like just bad luck.
It filled the fuselage and killed 8 people.
Oh my God!
Enrique Patella, Liliana
I'd
Mathol.
Give up at that point. I'd be like, nope, this avalanche, last straw for me. I'm done.
Remember Liliana, who fought to
not eat the...
Liliana Mathol was killed. Gustavo Nicolas.
I bet
Daniel
her last thought was,
Maspons.
this is what I get. This is God's way of, you know, or whatever.
Gustavo Nicolas, Daniel Maspons, Juan Menendez, Diego Storm, Carlos Roch, and Marcelo Perez. The death of Perez, the team captain and leader of the survivors, along with the loss of Liliana Mathol, who had nursed the survivors like a mother and a saint, were extremely discouraging to those remaining alive.
Yep.
The avalanche completely buried the fuselage, filled the interior within 3 feet 3 inches of the roof.
There goes their shelter.
Yeah. The survivors trapped inside soon realized they were running out of air.
Oh my God.
Nando Parado found a metal pole from the luggage racks, and they were able to get one of the windows from the pilot's cabin open, enough to poke a hole through the snow, providing ventilation. With considerable difficulty, on the morning of the 31st of October, they dug a tunnel from the cockpit to the surface, only to encounter a furious blizzard that left.
Oh my God.
They have no choice to stay inside the fuselage.
That is absolutely ridiculous.
They finally get out of the buried plane to the top and then run into a blizzard.
I think that people that go through this much shit, when they get back, if they survive, they should be like
taken care of for the rest of their life.
For the rest of their life. Like, it's ridiculous. They've been through enough.
For 3 days, the remaining survivors were trapped in an extremely cramped space within the buried fuselage. Again, 3 feet 3 inches headroom. Together with the corpses of those who had died in the avalanche, with no other choice, on the 3rd day, they began to eat the raw flesh of their newly dead friends. Parado later said it was soft and greasy, streaked with blood and bits of wet gristle. I gagged hard when I placed it in my mouth.
That's disgusting.
With Perez dead, cousins Arado and Fito Sarash and Daniel Fernandez assumed leadership. They took over harvesting flesh from their deceased friends and distributing it to the others. Before the avalanche, a few survivors became insistent that their only way of survival would be to climb over the mountains and search for help.
They're definitely not going to get found. They have to start walking. They should have started walking forever ago.
Yeah, because the co-pilot's dying statement that the aircraft had passed Caricia Carusia, sorry, the group believed that the Chilean countryside was just a few kilometers away to the west. They were actually more 55 miles to the east.
But they could have at least maybe found a more hospitable area,
Maybe.
like with something they could build a fire or animals or some shit.
Yeah, and they're deep in the Andes.
Oh, okay.
The snow that had buried the fuselage gradually melted as summer arrived. Survivors made several brief expeditions in the immediate vicinity of the aircraft in the first few weeks after the crash, but they found the altitude sickness, dehydration, snow blindness, malnutrition, and the extreme cold during the nights made traveling any significant distance an impossible task.
Yeah.
The passenger decided a few members would seek help. Several survivors were determined to join the expedition team, including Roberto Canesso, one of the 2 medical students, but others were less willing to or unsure of their ability to withstand such a physical and exhausting ordeal.
Yeah.
Numa Takati and Antonio Vicinitin were chosen to accompany Canesso and Parado. However, Takati's leg was stepped on and bruised. Which was stepped on and was bruised, had become septic. So he was unable to join this expedition.
Yeah.
Canesso, Parado, and Vicinitin were among the strongest and were allocated larger rations of food and the warmest clothes. They were also spared the daily manual labor around the crash site that was essential to the group's survival, so they could build their strength.
Yeah.
At Canesso's urging, they waited nearly 7 days to allow for higher temperatures.
Wow.
They hoped to get to Chile to the west, but a large mountain lay west of the crash site, persuading them to try heading east first.
Yeah.
They hoped that the valley where made them U-turn would allow them to walk west to Chile.
Right.
On the 15th of November, after several hours walking east, the trio found a largely intact tail section of the aircraft containing the galley about 1 mile east of the downhill of the fuselage.
They only had to go like a mile east to the tail to be able to find some more supplies?
Yeah, to find food.
The
and
galley
more
and
supplies,
stuff?
yeah.
Oh, that sucks so bad.
Inside and nearby, they found luggage containing a box of chocolates, 3 meat patties, a bottle of rum, cigarettes, extra clothes, comic books, and a little medicine. They also found the aircraft's 2-way radio. The group decided to camp that night instead of inside the tail section. They built a fire and stayed up late reading comic books.
What? While these people are dying? Come on.
Well, I mean, it takes
I
a
get
long
it,
time
yeah.
to make it go a mile. It probably took them most of the day to go that mile in the snow.
Yeah, but
They
God,
continued
he was
east
right there.
the next morning. They didn't even take the ship back. They just continued east. On the second night of the expedition, which was their first night sleeping outside, they nearly froze to death.
What did they do with the radio?
They probably took it with them.
Okay.
After some debate, the next morning, they decided it would be wiser to return to the tail, remove the aircraft's batteries, and take them back to the fuselage so they might power up the radio and make an SOS call to Santiago for help. Upon returning to the tail, the trio found that the 53-pound batteries were too heavy to take back to the fuselage,
Yeah.
which lay uphill from the tail section. They decided instead of that, it would be more effective to return the fuselage, disconnect the radio system from the aircraft's frame, take it back to the tail, and connect it to the batteries.
Wow.
One of the team members, Roy Harley, was an amateur electronics enthusiast,
Nice.
and they recruited his help on this endeavor. Unknown to any of the team members, the aircraft's electrical system used 115 volts AC, while the battery they had located produced
damn it.
24 volts DC,
God damn it.
making the plan futile from the beginning.
God, you're going to waste your time or energy doing this shit.
Oh,
This is
God.
the worst.
Yeah. After several days of trying to make the radio work, they gave up and returned to the fuselage with the knowledge that they would have to climb out of the mountains if they were have any hope of being rescued. On the return trip, they were struck by another blizzard.
Oh, no.
Harley lay down to die, but Parado would not let him stop and took him back to the fuselage.
Oh.
On the 15th of November, Antonio Nagaro died, and 3 days later, Rafael Echeverrian died. both from gangrene due to the infected wounds. Numo Takati was whose extreme revulsion for eating meat dramatically accelerated with the physical decline, died on day 60, the 11th of December, weighing only 55 pounds.
Yeah, he just didn't have it in him to do it.
Those left knew that they would die if they could not find help. The survivors had heard on the transistor radio that the Uruguayan Air Force had resumed searching for them.
Presumed? Why? What made him do that?
The snow was melting.
I see.
Remember they said that they're going to try to find the bodies when the snow started melting.
Because they obviously didn't expect anybody to still be alive.
It was now apparent that the only way out was to climb over the mountains to the west. They also realized that unless they found a way to survive the freezing temperatures in the nights, the trek was impossible.
Yep.
The survivors had found in the rear of the fuselage, came up with an idea of using insulation from the rear of the fuselage, copper wiring, and waterproof fabric that covered air conditioning of the plane to fashion a sleeping bag.
Oh, nice.
These guys are so... these guys are it's like a group of MacGyvers.
Yeah.
Crashed into the Andes. What would happen? Like, if there was an episode of MacGyver where he crashed in the Andes, I expect him to make all this shit.
Stuff, yeah.
But knowing their luck, MacGyver would be the one killed in the crash.
Yeah, for real.
Nando Parado described in his book Miracle in the Andes, 72 Days on the Mountain and My Long Trek Home, how they came up with the idea of making a sleeping bag. The second challenge would be to protect ourselves from the exposure, especially after sundown. At this time of the year, we could expect daytime temperatures well above freezing, but the nights were still cold enough to kill us. Mm-hmm. We knew now we couldn't expect to find shelter on the open slopes. We needed a way to survive the long nights without freezing, and the quilted bats of insulation we'd taken from the tail section gave us our solution. As we brainstormed about the trip, we realized we could sew the patches together to create a large, warm quilt.
Nice.
When we realized that by folding the quilt in half and stitching the seams together, we could create an insulated sleeping bag large enough for all three expeditioners to sleep in.
Nice.
With the warmth of three bodies trapped in the insulating cloth,
yeah,
we might be able to weather the coldest nights. Carlitos Pez took on the challenge. His mother had taught him to sew when he was a boy, and with needles and threads from the sewing kit found in his mother's cosmetic case, he began to work. To speed the progress, Carlitos taught others to sew, and we all took our turns. Kosh, Gustavo, and Fito turned to be our best and fastest tailors. After the sleeping bag was completed, Numo Tokato died.
Oh, dude.
Canesso was still hesitant. While others encouraged Parado, none would volunteer to go with him. Parado finally persuaded Canesso to set out, and joined by Vicentin, the three men took to the mountain on the 12th of December.
Yep.
On the 12th of December 1972, Parado, Canesso, and Vicentin, lacking mountaineering gear or any kind, began to climb the glacier of 11,710 feet.
That is ridiculous.
To the 15,320 feet peak, blocking their way to the west.
And then they got to get back down the other side with no gear.
Yeah, I know. No climbing gear, no ropes, nothing. Although, as engineered as these guys are, I'm sure
there's no way. Yeah. Even if they get up to the top of this mountain, how in the hell are they going to get back? Because it's not like there's going to be a gentle slope going back. Well, I don't know. Maybe there is, but yeah. It's probably going to be
get in the sleeping bag and to slide down.
Yeah.
Oh God. They trekked for over 10 days, traveling 38 miles, seeking help.
That's pretty far.
Yeah. For 10 days, and walking in the snow and walking in horrible conditions. Yeah. Based on the aircraft's altimeter, they thought they were at 7,000 feet, when they were actually at 11,800 feet.
And
Given the pilot's dying statement that they were near Crucio, they believed that they would be near the edge of the Andes, and that the closest help lay in that direction. As a result, they only brought 3 days' supply of meat.
Oh, no.
Parado wore 3 pairs of jeans, 3 sweaters over a polo shirt. He wore 4 pairs of socks wrapped in plastic bag. They had no technical gear, no map, no compass, no climbing experience, instead of climbing the ridge to the west, which was somewhat lower than the peak. they climbed straight up to the steep of the mountain.
Yeah.
They thought they would reach the peak in one day. Parado took the lead, and the other two often had to remind him to slow down, although the thin oxygen, poor air made it difficult for all of them.
Yeah.
Again, high altitude, run out of air quicker, run out of energy quicker, and you burn a shitload more calories.
Yeah.
During the part of the climb, they sank up to their hips in snow, which they had been softened by the summer days. It was still bitterly cold, but the sleeping bag enabled them to survive through the frigid nights. In the documentary filmed Stranded, Caniso described how the first night during the ascent, they had difficulty finding a place to put down the sleeping bag. A storm blew fiercely, and they had finally found a spot on the ledge of a rock at the edge of an abyss.
Great.
So, god damn it, dude. Caniso said it was the worst night of his life.
I bet.
The climb was very slow. The survivors of the fuselage watched them climb for 3 days. God. On the second day, Caniso thought he saw a road to the east and tried to persuade Parado to head in that direction.
Should have gone there.
Parado disagreed, and they argued without reaching a decision. On the third morning of the trek, Caniso stayed at their camp. Vicelin and Parado reached the base of near a vertical wall of 300 feet tall, encased in snow and ice.
Mm-hmm. And no climbing gear.
Parado was determined to hike out or die trying. Yeah. He used a stick from his pack to carve steps into the wall.
Oh my god.
He gained the summit of 15,260 feet before the high peak before Visitin. Thinking he would see green valleys of the Chile to the west, he was stunned to see a vast array of mountain peaks in every direction.
My God.
They had climbed the mountain on the border of Argentina and Chile, meaning the trekkers were still 10 kilometers from the green valleys of Chile.
That is awful, dude.
Visitin and Parado rejoined Canessa, where they had slept the night before. At sunset, while sipping on cognac and that they had found in the tail section, Parado said, "Roberto, can you imagine how beautiful this would have been if we were not dead men?"
Yeah, that's awful.
The next morning, the three men could see that the hike was going to take much longer than they originally planned. Mm-hmm. They were running out of food, so Visitin agreed to return to the crash site, leaving his remaining portions with the other two. The return was entirely downhill, and using the aircraft seat as a makeshift sleigh, he returned to the crash site in 1 hour.
Yeah. Yeah, but much faster going back down.
It took them
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
And it took him an hour to get back down.
That's awful, dude.
Parado and Canessa took 3 hours to climb to the summit. When Canessa reached to the top and saw nothing but snow-capped mountain for kilometers around them, his first thought was, "We're dead."
Yeah.
Parado saw 2 smaller peaks on the western horizon that were not covered in snow.
Right.
A valley at the base of the mountain they stood on wound its way toward the peaks. Mm-hmm. Parado was sure that there was a way out of the mountains. He refused to give up hope. Canessa agreed to go west. Only much later did Canessa learn that the road he saw to the east would have gotten them to the rescue sooner and easier.
Yep.
Should have just listened. Yeah, on the summit, Parado, I bet you he was like, "I fucking told you, dude," when they were rescued. On the summit, Parado told Canessa, "We may be walking to our deaths, but I would rather walk to meet my death than wait for it to come to me."
I agree.
Canessa agreed. "You and I are friends, Nando, and we have been through so much. Now let's go die together."
Nice.
They followed the ridge towards the valley.
To the end.
Yep, valley, and descended to a considerable distance. Parado and Canessa hiked for several more days. First, they were able to reach a narrow valley where the Parado had seen on the top of the mountains, where they had found the source of the Rio San Jose, leading to the Rio Padillo, which meets Rio Alcerifu and Martinez. A lot of rivers. They followed the river and reached the snow line. Gradually, there appeared more and more signs of human presence. First, some evidence of camping. Finally, on the 9th day, some cows.
Ooh. Kill the cow.
Yeah, kill it. When they rested in the evening when they were very tired, Canesso seemed unable to proceed further.
Why? You finally get to the...
It's worn
too
out.
much, yeah.
Yeah. As the men gathered wood for the fire, one of them saw 3 men on horseback at the other side of the river. Parado called to them, but the noise of the river made it impossible to communicate. One of the men across the river saw Parado and Canesso and shouted back, "Tomorrow." The next day, the man returned and scribed a note attached to a pencil and a rock and some string. Threw the message across the river, and Parado replied. Now, it's in Spanish.
Right. We're just going to assume it says,
Yeah.
you know, they
I'm not going to read the Spanish part because it would be butchered and it would be probably offensive. But the English version is, "I come from a plane that fell into the mountains. I am Uruguayan. We have been walking for 10 days, and I have a wounded friend up there in the plane. There are still 14 injured people. We have to get out from here quickly, and we don't know how. We don't have any food. We are weak. When are you going to come to fetch us? Please, we cannot even walk. Where are we?" So Sergio Carriano, a Chilean muleteer, read this note and gave them a sign that he understood. Chatelain talked to the other 2 men, and that one of them remembered that several weeks before, Carlos Pela's father had asked them if they had heard about the Andes plane crash. Mm-hmm. The muleteers could not imagine that anyone could be still alive.
After that long?
Yeah. Chatelain threw bread to the men across the river. He then rode on horseback westward for 10 hours to bring help.
Good.
During the trip, he saw another muleteer on the south side of Rio Asufio and asked him to reach the men and bring them to Las Maltines. Then he followed the river to its junction of Rio Tacarushi, where after crossing a bridge, he was able to reach the narrow route that linked the village of Panto Negro to the holiday resort of Tamas da Fraco. Here he was able to stop a truck and reach the police station. They relayed the news of the survivors to the Army Command in San Fernando, Chile, who contacted the Army in Santiago. Meanwhile, Parado and Canesso were brought to the horseback to Los Morentos de Crucio, where they were fed and allowed to rest.
Yep.
They had hiked 38 miles over 10 days.
That's crazy.
Since the plane crash, Canesso had lost almost half of his body weight,
Yep.
weighing 97 pounds.
Good Lord.
When the news broke that the people had survived the crash, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, the story of the passenger survivors after 72 days, drew to international attention. A flood of international reporters began walking several kilometers along the route from where they were found.
Yeah.
Not where they were found, but where Canesso and Parado were found. Found help. The Chilean Air Force provided 3 Bell UH-1 helicopters to assist with the rescue. They flew in heavy cloud cover under instrument conditions.
Imagine how the survivors felt finally seeing those helicopters.
Yeah. To Los Morentos de Crucia, where an army interviewed Parado and Canesso. When the fog lifted at about noon, Parado volunteered to lead the helicopters to the crash site. He had brought the pilot's flight chart and guided the helicopters up to the mountain to the location where the remaining survivors. 1 helicopter remained behind in reserve. The pilots were astounded at the difficult terrain that the 2 men had crossed to even reach help.
Yeah.
On the afternoon of the 22nd of December, 1972, the 2 helicopters carrying search and rescue personnel reached the survivors. The steep terrain only permitted the pilot to touch down with a single skid. Due to the altitude and the weight limits, the 2 helicopters were able to take only half of the survivors.
Oh, no.
4 members of the search and rescue team volunteered to stay
behind,
with the 7 survivors remaining on the mountain. The survivors slept a final night in the fuselage with the search and rescue party. The second flight of the helicopters arrived the following morning at daybreak, and they carried the remaining survivors to the hospitals in Santiago for evaluation.
Those poor people.
They were treated for a variety of conditions, including altitude sickness, dehydration, frostbite, broken bones, scurvy, and malnutrition. The last remaining survivors were rescued on the 23rd of December, 1972, more than 2 months after the
That
crash.
is wild.
Under normal circumstances, the search and rescue team would have brought back the remains of the dead for burial. However, given the circumstances, including the bodies were in Argentina and the Chilean rescuers left the bodies to the site until authorities could make the necessary decisions. The Chilean military photographed the bodies and mapped the area.
That was intense, dude.
Yeah.
Those poor people.
So, over the years, the survivors had published several books and portrayed film, television productions to produce an official website about the event.
Right.
Like I said, we've talked about The Shining references the crash and the remember in The Shining when the Torres family were going up to the hotel.
Yeah.
He tells the story of this.
I thought he was telling the story of the Donner Party.
Yeah, he tells it, but in the book,
Oh, he talks about the plane.
yeah, talks about the plane. He talks about the plane, and also, he talks about the plane, and he talks about the Donner Party in the movie.
Gotcha.
So I think in the book he talks about that. That's what it says here, that he was talking about how he talks about the rugby players.
Yeah.
Nando Parado, Miracle in the Andes. We've referenced that book several times during this episode. Sinesso Roberto, I had to survive a plane crash. He literally wrote, I had to survive how a plane crash in the Andes inspired me for calling to saving lives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, most of the survivors wrote books.
Right. I would.
Yeah. There's several movies. Alive is a feature film directed by Frank Marshall, narrated by John Malkovich, and starring Ethan Hawke, based on Reed's book about Alive, the story of the Andes Mountains. Nando Pareto served as a technical advisor in the film.
That's cool.
Can you imagine, though?
Yeah.
Like, reliving
PTSD.
reliving the conditions. Oh, my God. So, I mean, there was even a Rick and Morty episode
Oh, yeah.
where they did a parody of it. So, I mean, there's been plenty of references to this and everything, but, I mean, just waiting to be 72 days.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I mean, so out of 45 people on the plane, how many do you think made it out, rescued?
15.
Close. 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was between 15 and 17 because that was the what he said when they were getting when they finally found the help they needed.
Yeah.
That's
So
how many people were left.
out of 45 people, 29 died.
That's awful.
12 initially.
Awful.
The rest were
Overtime.
over time and eaten. But no one was murdered
No, which is
to be eaten.
which I think is
Which makes it better than the Donner Party, because the Donner Party people were murdered.
Murdered people, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the Uruguayan flight of the rugby
That was crazy.
players.
I'd never heard that. Well, I mean,
Well, you've
I never
heard
heard
you've
the
heard
details
snippets
of
of
it
it and
before,
stuff. But we hope you enjoyed that episode. It was a little bit longer than the rest of them, but I mean, it was such
a lot of details.
Yeah, it's a lot of
things we wanted
details.
to do it justice for sure.
Yeah, for real. And I mean, there's other instances of where cannibalism, and I kind of want to talk about. There's the Essex, the ship that got sunk by a sperm whale.
Oh wow.
That inspired Moby Dick.
Yeah.
That's a good story about cannibalism on the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it seems like and we'll also talk about another later on in an episode about cannibalism that happened a little bit too fast.
What do you mean?
Like 24 hours.
What?
Like these
Like
people
he
were
waited 24 hours.
no, like
before
these
resorting to
people were
cannibalism?
the people were stranded for like 24 hours
And
on an
that's it?
island. Yeah, and they started like it
Dude,
might
they didn't
have been
waste
longer.
Any time, did they?
Yeah, it might have been longer, but like I said, we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, horrendous how that happened.
And I'm glad that the survivors, the ones that did survive, they finally got out of that because that was
Yeah.
worst luck ever. They definitely do like winning lotteries and fucking never having to worry about anything for the rest of their life. That's for sure.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I'm sure they made money off the books and
I'd hope
movies
so.
and stuff and everything like that. But I mean, I'm sure if they had to go back, they'd be like, "Do you want to
rather
get all this
not do
money?"
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
like I'd rather not go through this thing. But like I said, they were like freaking MacGyvers out there, man.
Yeah,
they were
they
like
did some very
literally,
impressive-
doing anything to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you were in that situation, would you do that?
I died in the first day.
Oh, you would?
Yeah.
Would you not partake in the human flesh?
I honestly, I don't, unless I'm in that situation, I can't tell you for sure one way or another.
I think
I won't kill anybody.
No, I
to
wouldn't
eat
either.
them. But if somebody had given me their like what happened here, if they gave me their consent before they died, and like there was literally no other option, it's that or death.
I just can't
maybe-
believe that they would have had to walk a mile
I know.
to get
That's
to.
awful.
I mean, it was only
They
3 meat
still-
patties, but
they still probably would have ended up having to resort because they were there for
2 days.
If
Yeah,
they had found that like within the first couple of days, they would have still, even rationing it out, they would have ran out of food.
yeah, absolutely. It would have been like that, but if they would have all stayed there, they would have died.
Yeah.
They would have died, and it kind of sucks if they would have followed that road that he saw. Like if they would have,
a little bit faster and a little bit easier for them anyway.
Yeah, it would have been easier and sooner because he just would have walked the road.
Yep.
But it's just amazing. I mean, it's not that far. Like the Donner Party was hundreds of years, like
Yeah.
100 years.
Wasn't that long.
This one was like the people are still alive
Yeah.
that have went through this. So, thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Give us a 5-star rating or a like on YouTube. If you're interested in our Patreon, and you can subscribe as little as $1 and follow that link below to all of our social media and our store. So we'll see you next episode for the portals to hell.
Ooh.